Part 114. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1132. Chapter 1132, Choose quickly, Grandpa, I don't have much patience. Fortunately, the three people's vigilance was not completely lost. At the critical moment, Zhao Kong ducked down and punched the tiger in the belly. The beautiful tiger rolled to the side with a howl. The two people next to them were about to step forward to deal with the tiger. They didn't want to hear two roars of tigers suddenly coming from behind them. When they turned around, they saw two more tigers surrounding them, grinning at them and roaring in a low voice. I give up. Among the three people, one finally couldn't stand the fear and pressure and sprinkled the animal-repelling powder on himself. Smelling the animal-repelling powder, the three tigers sneezed in unison, then screamed and escaped. Far away. As everyone went deeper and deeper into Xiaoqingshan, they gradually realized that it was useless for a few or even dozens of people to stick together. The ferocious beasts here seem to have undergone some kind of training. The more people there are, the more ferocious beasts there are. It is even more dangerous if there are many people in a group. The people who sprinkled the medicinal powder on their bodies were also disappointed to find that the medicinal powder actually had a strange smell that could not be washed away even if it touched it even slightly. Now those who want to take off their clothes and wash away the powder can no longer muddle through. Of course, there are smart people who sprinkle the powder on the surrounding grass, but the effect of dispelling the beasts is greatly weakened. The beasts are almost unaffected and jump directly to the prey in their eyes. Suchen was followed by more than 20 disciples from Fuhiling. Although they attracted many ferocious beasts, Suchen's sword was too fast and too sharp to withstand them. After his dazzling sword blade swept over them, one after another the ferocious beasts started to attack. He fell to the ground, dead and could no longer die. Although Suchen could not completely protect everyone, after most of the beasts were killed by him, the remaining beasts could be dealt with relatively easily. Therefore, this team of more than 20 people moved very fast. In a short period of time, they were only halfway to the white line on the mountainside. After successfully passing, don't forget 5 spiritual stones for each person, Suchen killed the last patterned leopard, shook off the blood on the tip of the sword, and turned around and said to everyone. At this time, everyone was in admiration for Suchen. With only 5 spiritual stones, he was able to pass the quarterly examination and become the Vajra section for formal disciples. This was not a problem at all. Some people even took out spiritual stones and handed them to Suchen on the spot. However, just when everyone was full of hope and ready to move forward, a group of people from Nanlong Bay gathered around from the right, and the leader of them was Cao Hanking and Cao Siyuan looked at each other with sneers. There were a large number of people in Nanlong Bay, more than 30 people. Even if Cao Hanking, a person at the 7th level of Kaiwa Peak, was removed, their overall strength was still much higher than that of Suchen. Suchen, the more than 20 people behind him were a little panicked. They all nervously held the weapons in their hands and faced the people in Nanlong Bay while asking in a low voice, Suchen, what should I do? Those who come are not good, and those who are good do not come, but I feel that they are coming for me. Suchen whispered to behind him, the fight will start later, you go first, I will stop these guys. When everyone heard this, their eyes immediately became wet, and they were moved and said, Brother Ye is so kind, how can we abandon you and ignore you? If we die together, we will die together. If you don't retreat, we won't retreat either. When Su Chen heard this, he became angry and turned around and shouted, if you all stay here, who will go with my more than 100 spiritual stones? Get the fuck out of here, get out of here. Everyone was dumbfounded and didn't know what to do for a moment. There is a huge gap between our strength and our opponent. Staying here will not only fail to help Suchen, but will actually drag him down. Let's go, trust Suchen, he will find a way. Everyone finally figured it out and backed away slowly. The fact is just as Suchen said, the Nanlongguan people only targeted Suchen and didn't even look at the departure of the more than 20 Fuhiling people. Oops. What a coincidence that I met Brother Ye here. Since that battle more than 2 months ago, Cao has been very concerned about Brother Ye. Cao Siyuan yelled at Suchen, with no trace of hatred in his eyes. When Suchen saw his companion walking away, he raised his head and stared at him, sarcastically saying, if you can't win, you can't fight. Win, fighting with your mouth is what women do, but I didn't expect Brother Cao to like to play this kind of sissy thing. Cao Siyuan suddenly became angry and was about to step forward when he was stopped by Cao Hanking on the side. Cao Hanking looked at the disciples around him, and immediately more than 30 people surrounded Suchen. With a wow sound, Cao Hanking shook out a paper fan with pictures of ladies and said with a soft smile, I'll give you 3 breaths to consider whether you should kneel down and beg for mercy, or wait for me to cripple you and throw you into the ravine to feed the tigers. Hurry up and choose, Grandpa, I don't have much patience. Seeing his cousin take action in person, Cao Siyuan sneered, folded his arms and looked at Suchen with interest. When he thought about it, his cousin was at the 7th level of Kaiwa Peak, and his martial arts skills were by no means ordinary, including the golden snake sword. Fa Geng has reached the state of great success. It is really easy to deal with Suchen. At this time, he was very leisurely and carefully observed Suchen's expression. Later, that face would not only be, there will be despair, shame, and anger, and there will also be your own shoe marks, ha ha ha. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1133. Chapter 1133. It's time to show your true strength. However, the 3-breath time passed in an instant, and Cao Siyuan did not see what he wanted to see. That guy even had the mood to slap his nose in front of everyone. Vulgar. Coward. Shameless, Cao Siyuan pointed at Suchen and yelled. With a throw sound, Suchen flicked his fingers, and a mung bean-sized booger flew towards Cao Siyuan accurately. Cao Siyuan screamed, pulled a disciple from Nanlongguan, and blocked it in front of his chest. With a sound, Cao Hanking put away the paper fan in his hand and said with a gloomy expression, the time has come. Since you are seeking death, don't blame me for being cruel. Suchen said impatiently, hurry up, I'm in a hurry. Cao Hanking's face turned slightly red. This kid was so arrogant, which completely aroused his anger. Maybe he doesn't know his true strength yet, and thinks he can get carried away by defeating his inferior brother? A frog in the well. Cao Hanking, it will let you know what regrets are. Suchen's mere 6th level Kaiwa strength is not worthy of him using his proud martial arts, the golden snake sword technique. Cao Hanking tapped his feet lightly and used the Arhat fist with a sharp move. The sound broke through the air, and he rushed towards the opponent with lightning speed. Huh? The speed is not bad, Suchen was slightly shocked. Although the opponent's move was not very powerful, it was fast enough. Even if Suchen barely managed to dodge, the opponent would catch the flaw. It would be better to hit him head-on, just to test the opponent's strength. Overlord Fist, Suchen's momentum suddenly changed, and he punched out like an unparalleled overlord, which also caused a sharp sound of breaking through the air. When Cao Siyuan saw this move again, the bridge of his nose suddenly hurt like a conditioned reflex. This guy was this guy that day. He used this martial arts skill to knock himself away, and now he wants to use this move against his cousin, but he made the wrong calculation. Cao Siyuan sneered, as if he had already seen Suchen's hand being broken by his cousin's punch, and he fell to the ground. The tragic sight of flying out. The 2 fists clashed, making a loud noise, and the overflowing wind blew the surrounding rubble away. Some beasts hiding in the dark were frightened by this, and howled with their tails between their legs. Fleeing far away, it shocked the more than 30 ordinary Nanlongguan disciples around him. The wind of the fist dissipated, and everyone took a closer look, only to see Cao Hanking standing firmly on the spot, looking calm and calm. Suchen on the opposite side took 5 steps back, and a trace of blood spilled from the corner of his mouth. Cao Yuan was a little surprised. Suchen was not knocked away by his cousin. He only took 5 steps back and suffered some injuries in a head-on confrontation. This guy has been injured for more than 2 months. His strength has increased so fast, it seems that he has been completely abandoned by him. Cao Yuan clenched his fists, feeling extremely unwilling. Oh! Not bad, he was able to take my blow well, try my tiger roaring fist again. Although Cao Hanking looked indifferent, he was still a little surprised in his heart. This boy's strength really cannot be regarded as an ordinary 6th level Kaiwu monk. Suchen was slightly shocked. Cao Hanking's strength should not have reached the 8th level of Kaiwu, but he was definitely better than Kaiwu. The strength of the 7th level is much higher, and should be the peak strength of the 7th level. As for the cultivation realm, the further you go, the greater the gap between each level is. It will be difficult for Suchen to cross the border and fight across the 2 levels of cultivation gap as before. Suchen didn't want to get too entangled with this guy. His goal was the spiritual transformation pill on the top of the mountain. So he pulled out the fine steel sword behind him and faced Cao Hanking's tiger roaring fist with a move of Qinyi swordsmanship at Xiaochen level. After all, Cao Hanking is a monk in the Qi martial realm, not a master in the Xian martial realm who can release his spiritual power. Naturally, he will not use his physical fists to counteract the steel sword. As soon as his footsteps spun, he used the golden snake footwork, and his body flashed to the side. Drew a rapier. Suchen, I have never seen blood since I mastered the golden snake sword technique. Today, I will use you to sacrifice the sword. Cao Hanking's eyes flashed, and the thin sword in his hand was like a spiritual snake. He swallowed dangerous snake messages while swiping towards the opponent. 100 leaves chopped, a bolt of sword light was swung out from Suchen's hand, facing the venomous snake that was shooting at it. Sparks flew everywhere in an instant, and with a ding sound, the 2 swords touched each other and then separated quickly. Everyone watched intently. Go, this time the 2 sides were evenly matched, and no one took advantage. Cousin underestimates the enemy. Wouldn't it be better to just use your strongest move to kill that kid? Cao Yuan was extremely anxious when he saw this situation. Cao Hanking in the field was even more shocked. Although the move just now only used the 3rd power of the golden snake sword technique, it was definitely not an ordinary 6th level Kaiwu. A monk can resist it, but if it were his cousin, he would definitely be seriously injured by the move just now. It seems that it's impossible not to show your true strength. There are still more than 30 people watching nearby. If you don't get rid of this guy quickly, you will be the one who will be embarrassed. Thinking of this, Cao Hanking's shoulders sank slightly, his body leaned forward slightly, the tip of the rapier in his hand trembled rapidly and swayed, and his eyes stared at Suchen's neck like a poisonous snake. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1134. Chapter 1134 Wandering Dragon Footwork. A bunch of trash. The muscles in Cao Hanking's whole body were tense, and the spiritual energy in his body was running rapidly, like a cobra that was ready to attack, ready to launch a swift blow at any time, bite the opponent's throat, and inject the poison in the fangs. Everyone knows that Cao Hanking will go all out this time. Suchen could clearly feel the pressure brought by the other party. This time he did not dare to exaggerate and directly use the great perfection of Qinyi sword technique, Qinyi slash. Sword threads gradually covered the body within a 1-foot radius. These sword threads were the result of Suchen using Kinyi sword technique to the extreme. The sword threads were dim and dull, which was the result of Suchen restraining all its power. As long as the opponent was near, these thousands of sword threads would burst out in an instant and engulf everything. Everyone standing aside, including Cao Yuan, was speechless at this time. The momentum of the two of them was so amazing, it seemed like just one spark could detonate the whole place. Cao Yuan was so frightened that his legs were shaking just by watching, but Suchen on the other side had to directly bear the full pressure of his cousin's move. When the battle has reached this point, it is impossible to say that Cao Yuan is not convinced by Suchen, but he is just unwilling to admit it. This guy is so difficult to deal with, and he doesn't even have any flaws exposed. Cao Hanking squinted his eyes and stared at Suchen, impatient in his heart. In that case, there is no need to look for his flaws. With my strength, which is much higher than the opponent's, I can just kill him. The golden snake came out of the hole. Cao Hanking followed the sword and turned into a snake shadow. With a hiss, it instantly came to Suchen. The thin sword bent and heaved under Cao Hanking's secret strength and went straight to Suchen's door. With a ding sound, sparks flew. A sword wire surrounding Suchen hit the incoming snake shadow, and instantly burst out with a cold light. The snake shadow immediately appeared and turned into a clearly visible golden snake. He opened his mouth wide and bit it, but the sword thread only blocked it for a moment and then dissipated. However, one sword thread dissipated, and there were still 999 sword threads wrapped around it. Moreover, Suchen's fine steel sword kept dancing, new sword threads are constantly being added. The golden snake bites off 1, 10, or 100 sword threads, and more sword threads surround it. The golden snake gradually loses its solid shape, and finally consumes hundreds of sword threads. After the silk thread, he neighed unwillingly and disappeared. Cao Hanking didn't expect that the other party would actually resolve his move. The golden snake came out of the hole. His heart sank slightly, and his footsteps wandered around Suchen in a strange manner. His figure gradually became blurred and transformed. Make a circle of after images. With the golden snake footwork and golden snake swordsmanship, I don't believe you can still block it. Cao Hanking's whole body twisted in a strange movement. To outsiders, it looked like a big dancing snake, wrapping around Suchen in circles, and then gradually shrinking. Not good. This guy is going to haunt me to death. Suchen immediately saw Cao Hanking's intention. The sword wire around him hit the big snake that Cao Hanking transformed into. It just turned into a swarm of sparks, but the snake's formation was still shrinking. The more the big snake shrank, the harder the sword wire hit it. It was so dense that Cao Hanking must have felt uncomfortable. But he insisted on entangling himself to death. Could he just wait to die like this? I have to use the dragon footwork. Suchen thought to himself. This Cao Hanking is not only strong in cultivation, but also has no weaknesses in martial arts. If you continue to fight with him, you will only suffer losses. Suchen showed a sharp look in his eyes and shouted, "Explode!" Thousands of sword threads around the body suddenly exploded, and countless cold lights shot out, shaking the entangled snake away a little. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Suchen used an exquisite dragon walking move to get out of the snake formation. In an instant, he rushed to the ordinary disciples of Nanlongguan who were surrounding him. Break! Suchen punched out, and the three people in front of him were directly knocked away by this powerful punch. Suchen took the opportunity to run away. A bunch of trash. Cao Yuan pointed at the surroundings and screamed. The big snake neighed and disappeared. Cao Hanking revealed his figure, stared at the direction where Suchen disappeared, used the golden snake footwork, and chased after him. Want to run? Stop. Trees and rocks flew quickly backwards on both sides. Zhao Kong gasped and ran forward with all his strength, less than a foot behind him, chasing a white-haired wolf king. The other two people who were originally with him after one person gave up and quit, the other person was seriously injured in a fight with a beast not long after. It was Zhao Kong who sprinkled a pack of beast repellent powder on him in an emergency, which saved his teammate's life. Now, the three companions are together. He was the only one left. He never thought that a quarterly examination of the Vajra sect would be so dangerous and difficult, and that it would be so difficult to become a formal disciple and get 8 spiritual stones per month. There is a long way ahead. There were more than a dozen people standing in the distance. Zhao Kang's eyes lit up and he realized that the white line was not far away. He was so happy that he gritted his teeth and used all his energy to run. His running speed was even faster. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1135. Chapter 1135. What happened? 1-star mid-level monster. Suddenly, a sharp roar came from behind. Zhao Kong had no time to look back, and heard a scream of ouch behind him. A white shadow flew over his head and fell heavily into the rocks in front. Zhao Kong took a closer look and saw that it was the white-haired wolf king chasing after him. Before he had time to think about what had happened, a familiar figure rushed past him with a hoo, crossed the white line in the blink of an eye, and continued to run towards the top of the mountain amidst the exclamations of more than a dozen people. Go! Yeah, Suchan. Zhao Kong looked at the figure that had disappeared from sight and stood there blankly. Just 3 breaths later, another roar sounded. Zhao Kong turned around and saw nothing clearly. He only felt a strong wind blowing in front of him. After a long while, I heard a drawn-out voice. Suchan, stop. Zhao Kang's mind was a little confused, and he opened and closed his mouth and murmured, what happened? The wandering dragon footwork consumes a lot of spiritual energy. Even if Suchen has comprehended this footwork to the level of Dachan and operates it from the heart, running so fast for such a long time is still a bit too much. After all, this footwork belongs to Xian level martial arts. It should be practiced by monks at the Suanhui realm or higher. It is too reluctant to push it with the amount of spiritual energy in the Kaiwa realm. Fortunately, the residual scroll technique that Suchen practiced had the advantage of having a large amount of spiritual energy, but even so, he had consumed 30% of his spiritual energy along the way. Cao Hanking, who was chasing after him, was shocked. From the beginning to now, the speed of that brat had not slowed down at all. From the look of him, he still had some energy left. Cao Hanking no longer dared to despise him at this time. A mere 6th level Kaiwa cultivation level was able to deal with him to such an extent, which was far beyond ordinary monks of the same level. This son is so difficult to deal with, and the two sides have already become enemies. If you don't keep him here, I'm afraid he will suffer revenge in the future. On the hillside of Xiaoqingshan, the mountain fog gradually thickened and mixed with white clouds, making it difficult to tell whether one was in the clouds or the fog. Cao Hanking gradually lost sight of Suchen, but he was not worried about losing the boy. After chasing for so long, if that kid really wanted to escape, cross the white line and qualify for the quarterly exam, he could just go back to the bottom of the mountain to find the two uncles. But he didn't do that, and kept running towards the top of the mountain. This is obviously an attempt to get the elixir from the top of the mountain. If you are greedy, the snake swallows the elephant. I'll make you pay, Cao Hanking sneered in his heart and moved faster. The closer to the top of the mountain, the fewer beasts around him. This abnormal situation not only did not make Suchen relax, but made him more vigilant. It was less than 100 meters away from the top of the mountain. Suchen stopped, and saw that a layer of the top of the mountain in front of him had been cut off, leaving a piece of flat land. In the middle of the flat ground stood a 3-foot-long steel column with the thickness of the mouth of a bowl. From the top of the steel column, 7 or 8 people were hung. Net bags, there is a small box in each net bag. Presumably, that small box is the biggest reward in this quarter test. However, Suchen's eyes did not stay on those small boxes for long, because of the steel pillar at his feet. A sharp-toothed beast covered in black armor was locked with 3 1-inch thick steel chains. 1-star mid-level monster, Suchen's eyes suddenly narrowed. A 1-star mid-level monster is already equivalent to the strength of a 9th-level monk in the Qi martial realm, but in actual combat, it cannot be calculated like this. Because the monster possesses evil energy that ordinary monks do not have. With the same strength, when monks fight monsters, their strength is often suppressed by evil spirits and they can only exert 5 or 6 points of their strength. Therefore, the only way to truly fight against this sharp-toothed beast is to be a monk at the 9th level of Kaiwu who has killed countless people. To be able to fight. However, although this sharp-toothed beast is powerful, it has been chained by the Vajragate. As long as you do not enter within 3 feet of it, you will not be in any danger. But this also means that, it was difficult for Suchen to get the elixir on the steel pillar. The wind roared behind him. Suchen turned back, his mind changed quickly, and then he looked at Cao Hanking with a smile on his face as he hurriedly chased after him. Cao Hanking saw Suchen stopped. Originally, he wanted to fight directly, but after seeing the monster behind Suchen, he couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. Sharp tooth, Cao Hanking's whole body tensed up. After seeing the ferocious beast locked up with a steel chain, he quietly breathed a sigh of relief. How about we make a deal? Suchen had a gentle smile on his face, as if the two of them had never fought before. One person went to lure the monster away, and the other took the opportunity to take off the net bag. Cao Hanking did not hide the sarcasm in his eyes, and sneered, "Okay. You lead it, I'll pick it." "Okay," Suchen's answer surprised Cao Hanking, and he secretly wondered what trick this kid had. Suchen showed his sincerity very well. Before Cao Hanking could think clearly, he pulled out his stainless steel sword and swiped at the sharp-toothed beast that was pretending to sleep. Cao Hanking frowned and stared at the boy, stopping where he was without moving. What does this guy mean? You can tell with your toes that this kid has bad intentions, but why would he do the stupid thing of actively seducing the monster? Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1136. Chapter 1136. Damn it. Got fooled by that kid. Suchen stopped 3 feet away from the sharp-toothed beast, which was just the critical point of safety. Suchen looked at Cao Hanking, with the same smile on his face, clasping his fists and saying, "Brother Cao, this opportunity cannot be missed. Although you and I have some irrelevant grievances, this does not affect us from getting the elixir above. Brother Cao, although it's not common for someone to get a high-grade elixir from a noble family." Cao Hanking was shocked. He only knew that there would be a good elixir at the top of the mountain, but he didn't expect it to be a high-grade elixir. Compared with ordinary elixirs, the effects of top-grade elixirs are not simply several times greater. However, he would not fully believe Suchen's words. He took a few steps forward and said to Suchen, "You can just come forward. Cao is not a narrow-minded villain. He will definitely take out double portions of the elixir and share it equally between you and me." Cao Hanking kept talking nonsense. Suchen smiled slightly when he heard it, kicked his toes, and shot a piece of gravel towards the lying sharp-toothed beast. With a bang, the gravel hit the sharp-toothed beast's forehead and broke into several pieces. A low growl sounded from the sharp-toothed beast's long and narrow mouth, and its eyes covered with thick armor rolled up. The sharp-toothed beast opened its eyes and stared at the boy in front of him with its vertical pupils narrowed. It had been a long time since he had fought against this kind of monster. When he was stared at by this monster, Suchen's spiritual energy felt a little stagnant. "My cultivation level is still too low," Suchen sighed in his heart. He thought back then, when he was in the Suanwi realm, he could defeat a monster of this level with just a pair of physical fists. Pieces of gravel were shot at the sharp-toothed beast, but this one the monster just lay there motionless, and these ordinary gravels hit it, not even scratching it. "Is this how you lure it away?" Cao Hanking mocked, with a hint of cunning in his eyes, and took a few steps closer to Suchen. "How about I help you?" "Okay." Suchen seemed innocent and looked at him unprepared. "Haha, this monster cannot be treated with ordinary methods." Cao Hanking slowly approached Suchen while talking and trying to attract the other person's attention. When the two sides were 5 steps away, Cao Hanking suddenly became angry, shook out a packet of medicinal powder from his sleeve, and sprinkled it all on Suchen. "Ha ha ha! This will attract the monster." Cao Hanking succeeded with one blow and quickly retreated, laughing loudly. "What did you think it was?" It turned out to be datura pollen. Suchen gently patted the medicinal powder on his head. Unexpectedly, he didn't feel angry at all. He handed over his hands and said, "Thank you, brother Cao, for helping me. I will go and lure that evil beast away." After saying that, Suchen held the sword and broke through the safe distance of 3 feet, and walked towards the sharp-toothed beast step by step. Cao Hanking stared at Suchen, who was behaving abnormally, and suddenly felt something bad in his heart. Sharp-toothed beast. The beast smelled the scent of datura pollen and became obviously irritable. He stood up, grinned and stared at the young man walking towards him. His claws scratched the ground and he let out a loud growl. With a roar, the sharp-toothed beast rushed towards Suchen, and the two sides immediately fought together. Suchen could only barely dodge under the fierce and violent attack of the sharp-toothed beast, and was in danger. Cao Hanking sneered loudly, regardless of this kid. What was his intention? Now that he was entangled by this monster, he couldn't escape easily. Just in time, after he took the elixir, he kicked the kid behind and let him feed it to the beast. Isn't it great? After several leaps, Cao Hanking easily climbed up to the steel pillar, and was about to take off the net bag, but unexpected changes occurred under his feet. Chapter 20: Seizing the Spiritual Pill. At some point, Suchen took off most of it. Datura pollen's coat was thrown on the head of the sharp-toothed beast. Although the clothes were quickly torn apart by the sharp-toothed beast, a large amount of datura pollen was also inhaled into the nose of the sharp-toothed beast. Roar! With a shocking roar, the sharp-toothed beast's vertical pupils gradually turned red. But at this moment, a vague sound of dragon roar came from Cao Hanking's feet. Cao Hanking looked down and saw an extremely blurry the figure, like a swimming dragon, suddenly disappeared. Isn't this a mysterious level martial skill that can only be practiced by Suanwi realm masters, Wandering Dragon Step? How did this child learn it? Cao Hanking was shocked, but without waiting for him to get suspicious, the targetless sharp-toothed beast immediately stared at Cao Hanking on the steel pillar with its violent eyes. Cao Hanking was stared at by it, and his limbs immediately became cold, and the spiritual power in his body was not running smoothly. 10% of the strength was suddenly reduced to only 50%. Damn it! Got fooled by that kid. Cao Hanking was now unable to advance or retreat and was in a critical situation. Suchen panted heavily and hid behind a boulder dozens of meters away. While recovering his spiritual power, he stared closely at the changes in the field. He had just performed the great feat of wandering dragon footwork. Realm, just a moment, half of the spiritual power in the body was consumed. This Xian-level martial arts is really not something that can be mastered by the Qi martial realm. Although the sharp-toothed beast has a moving space of 3 feet, its jumping ability is limited. It was about 2 feet and 8 feet tall. Every time it jumped, the sharp-toothed beast's long and narrow mouth was only 2 feet away from Cao Hanking's butt. Cao Hanking was so frightened that he hugged the top of the steel pillar and cried out. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1137. Chapter 1137. The teeth are broken. Quarterly exams are over. Suchan. If I, Cao Hanking, can escape, I will fight you to the death, Cao Hanking screamed wildly, feeling fierce in his heart. He took his hands off the steel pillar and jumped down to the other side while the sharp-toothed beast was bouncing. As soon as his feet landed, the sharp-toothed beast over there had already rushed over. Cao Hanking waved his hands repeatedly, and the big he threw out a lot of magic talismans, but he could barely avoid being bitten by the beast. It was impossible to escape from the beast's attack. Now he completely understood that although the kid just now was fighting with the fight between the sharp-toothed beasts seemed to be full of danger. In fact, the boy did it deliberately. In fact, the boy's body skills were much higher than his own. Cao Hanking was so angry that he almost bit his teeth into pieces. He could not bear the pain in his heart. Dropping blood, he threw out the magic talismans given to him by his family for free, but it only slightly relieved the worry about his life. Even so, in just a few breaths, he had been scratched several times by the beast. If he hadn't been, he was also wearing a piece of precious armor, so he might have died here long ago. But at this moment, Suchen's figure appeared again. Seeing him walking slowly over, Cao Hanking suppressed the hatred in his heart and forced a smile. Brother Ye Gao Yi, please join forces with me to kill this beast. When the time comes, the elixir on the pillar will be chosen by Brother Ye. Suchen smiled and said, Ye has this intention, Brother Cao, don't worry, I'll come right away. Suchen walked slowly 3 feet away and took a look. Cao Hanking urged him again and again, but Suchen didn't move at all. Cao Hanking was in a panic. At this time, he was in a very embarrassed state, with tattered clothes and numerous wounds. Cao Hanking screamed, Suchen, if I die, you will be hunted by my Cao family until you die. Suchen sneered in his heart. In a sense, he had already become enemies with the Qingxia section. Does he still care about the small Cao family? After finding out the truth, Suchen turned and left, and his figure gradually disappeared from Cao Hanking's sight. But Cao Hanking knew that that guy must be hiding not far away and peeking at him. The magic talismans on his body were gradually used up, and the magic weapon presented by the clan leader's grandfather was also chewed with holes by the sharp-toothed beast. He could no longer use it up. The boy was obviously just now. He came over to observe his own reality. If he didn't show up for so long, he might have seen through his plan. Cao Hanking was filled with hatred, that little beast was so cunning. He grabbed the last blue talisman in his hand, and a trace of physical pain flashed in his eyes. He gritted his teeth and slapped hard, turning into a blue water ball to wrap him up. This was his last life-saving magic weapon, a second-level defensive talisman. Every core member of the Cao family only had one like this. Regardless of the bleeding in his heart, the sharp-toothed beast's thick front paws appeared in front of him, and with a fierce slap, the blue water ball was instantly flattened, but it was able to withstand the blow without breaking. And Cao Hanking relied on the amazing elasticity of the water ball to quickly retreat, and in the meantime, the sharp-toothed beast was slapped again, and the water ball burst with a wave, and Cao Hanking retreated 3 feet away. The sharp-toothed beast rushed over angrily, but was caught by the steel chain and could only face Cao Hanking. Roaring wildly. At this moment, Suchen suddenly appeared behind Cao Hanking. Cao Hanking no longer had any magic weapon to save his life. If he was pushed into the attack range of the sharp-toothed beast by that kid, he would really die here. But at this time, Cao Hanking's spiritual power was almost exhausted, and he had no power to fight back against Suchen. Suchen did not hesitate, turned his hands into palms, and slapped Cao Hanking. However, a loud shout made Suchen stop his movements and turned around. At first glance, Cao Yuan was leading more than 20 Nanlongguan disciples. If Suchen could see them, then they must be able to see this place. Suchen sighed secretly. It seemed that he couldn't leave Cao Hanking here. If no one comes, Suchen pushes Cao Hanking into the mouth of the sharp-toothed beast. Even if he is suspected, there is no evidence to prove that he is the murderer. But Suchen is not that big of a deal to do it in full view of the public. If I dare to do this, the Vajra sect will definitely catch me as soon as possible. When Cao Hanking heard his cousin's voice, he suddenly felt that this was the most beautiful voice in his life. It was like the voice of an immortal, which made his heart that had sunk to the bottom of the valley and was destined to die again come to life. Cao Hanking was overjoyed and shouted, "I'm here, I'm here. Suchen is going to kill me. Help me." Suchen slapped him, knocking the jumping guy to the ground. Without any worries, Suchen's figure flashed and appeared on the steel pillar. Before the sharp-toothed beast pounced on him, he pulled out a net bag. Briefly dealt with the sharp-toothed beast, and then floated away safely. Half an hour later, everyone gathered at the white line on the mountainside. This place was divided into circles by the Vajra sect people with some kind of white powder. As long as everyone stood in the circle, unexpectedly, a ferocious beast attacked among them. Chen Ben and Jing Shen looked at everyone and nodded slightly. In this quarterly examination, 11 people were seriously injured and no one died. 73 of them passed the quarterly examination, accounting for 10% of the total. Approximately half of the reference number was passed, which is a pretty good pass rate. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1138. Chapter 1138. The forbidden area left by the powerful monk King Kong with angry eyes. The Vajra sect does not need people who are in danger, unable to walk in battle, and greedy for life and afraid of death. Therefore, all assessments are based on testing the courage and strength of the disciples. Chen Ben and Jing Shen looked at Suchen, who was standing aside with a calm expression, and nodded slightly. In this quarterly examination, the boy with the best score was none other than that young man. He was the only one among the disciples who obtained the elixir. They didn't care how Suchen obtained the elixir. Whether it was through his own cultivation or strategy, these were all part of his strength. As long as he could obtain the elixir, it proved that he had the strength. 2 uncles. That Suchen was ambitious and wanted to kill my cousin on the top of the mountain just now. If we hadn't arrived in time, I'm afraid my cousin would have been saved. The disciple requests the 2 master uncles to bring Suchen to justice to rectify the righteousness of the Vajra sect. Cao Yuan knelt down in front of Chen Ben and cried out Suchen's crimes. Dozens of disciples from Nanlongguan nearby also joined in the momentum. Suchen snorted coldly and said sarcastically, "Does that cousin of yours have something like this? Are the wounds man-made? Furthermore, is your cousin dead? Since he is not dead and was not injured by anyone, your remarks are just frame-up. You have to bring me to justice. I think you have to be brought to justice, lest others think that everyone in the Vajra sect can talk nonsense and spit shit." Cao Yuan pointed at Suchen and was so angry that he could not speak. Everyone in Fuhuling had received a lot of help from Suchen. At this time, they all worked together to build momentum for Suchen. The momentum was several times greater than that of Nanlong Bei, and even Cao Yuan was so angry that I almost fainted. "All right." Chen Ben looked serious and shouted, "Don't let this matter happen again. The quarterly examination has ended, and all those who have passed the test will be formally inspected by the elders of the Vajra sect at the martial arts arena tomorrow. Those who fail will have 2 days to collect the silver and leave the Vajra gate. Did you hear everything clearly? Listen clearly. There are more than 100 disciples, some are happy and some are sad. and the happiest among them are the disciples who passed the quarterly examination in Fuheling. Originally, they were worried that they would be bullied by the Nanlongguan people in the Jingongmen in the future, but now it seems that even if a master like Cao Hanking was defeated by Suchen, one was unconscious, and the other successfully obtained the elixir. The two were at odds. Cao Yuan hugged his unconscious cousin and looked at Suchen's handsome side face, gritting teeth secretly. Let me allow you to be arrogant for a while. When my cousin wakes up and asks for the reason, it won't be too late to settle the score with you. Chapter 21 Spiritual Array. Okay, boy, I really let you get the elixir, Jing Sheng patted Suchen on the shoulder and said with a smile. Well, it was just a fluke. The two of them were walking alone on the mountain path. At this time, the setting sun illuminated the side of the mountains red, and those who watched it felt warm in their hearts. Hey, let me ask, did you do it to Cao Hanking? Jing Sheng asked in a low voice, with a strong look of gossip in his eyes. Suchen held the back of his head with both hands and raised his eyebrows. What does it have to do with me? I, Suchen, have always been kind-hearted. Am I the kind of person who ignores the friendship between fellow disciples and doesn't step forward when I see fellow disciples in trouble? Jing Shenzhuo looked astonished. When you say that, I understand, it must be related to you. Suchen rolled his eyes, looking indifferent. Jing Sheng glanced at him, suddenly sighed, and said, Boy, improve your strength as soon as possible. Although your qualifications are very poor, you are the only one I have seen in my life. But for some reason, from the first moment I saw you, I felt that your future achievements would be extraordinary. Oh? Do you think so highly of me? Suchen looked at him in surprise. Seeing that he didn't speak, he thought about what he just said and asked, but what happened? Jing Sheng laughed, just saying nonsense like the weather is really nice today. When the two of them parted, Jing Sheng said, aren't you wondering why the mountain where the Jikao is taking the test is called Xiaoqing Shan? Oh, because the sect also has a mountain called Dakingshan, where there is a broken wall holding up the sky. Under the broken wall is the spiritual formation set up by the sect to speed up the disciples' cultivation. The spiritual energy in the spiritual formation is several times richer than that in the outside world. You already have the spirit transformation pill. If you go there to practice, you will get twice the result with half the effort. Suchen looked calm, clasped his fists and said, Thank you, Brother Jing, for letting me know. Also, remember to improve your strength as soon as possible. Jing Sheng dropped these words, waved his hands, and left gracefully. Suchen stood there, thinking about the meaning of his last words, his eyebrows gradually furrowed. Dakingshan and Xiaoqingshan are separated by hundreds of miles. One large and one small stand opposite each other. The shapes of the mountains are generally similar. But there is a 100-foot-high broken wall on the top of Daking Mountain. It is as if a powerful force pulled a 100-foot broken wall from somewhere and threw it on the top of Daking Mountain. Dakingshan is a forbidden area of the Vajra sect, and non-official disciples of the Vajra sect are not allowed to enter. It is said that the place where the Vajra gate is located was still a scorched earth thousands of years ago. Thousands of years ago, a powerful monk with the name Raging Eyes Vajra died here, and his flesh and blood seeped into the land. After thousands of years of nourishment, this place was transformed into what it is now. Moreover, some people say that the broken wall on Daking Mountain was formed from the whole body of the Raging Eyes Vajra monk. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1139. Chapter 1139 Dakingshan Cultivation Stone Chamber. Yajio, you son of a bitch. This kind of rumor was so ridiculous that Suchen just laughed it off. But there is indeed something strange about that 100-foot broken wall. The green mountain where the broken wall is located is barren of grass, and the surrounding spiritual energy is much richer and more violent than elsewhere, so it is not suitable for monks to practice. Fortunately, thousands of years ago, the first ancestor of the Vajra sect set up a large formation here, covering everything below the mountainside of Daking Mountain. Although the spiritual energy inside was still violent, it was much better than before, and it was already beyond what the monks could bear. Since then, the spiritual formation here has become a training place for Vajra sect disciples, making great contributions to the development of Vajra sect. However, ordinary disciples like Suchen need to pay a certain amount of spirit stones if they want to enter the spiritual formation to practice, and because their cultivation is not enough, they can only practice at the foot of Daking Mountain. Further up, because it is closer to the broken wall, the spiritual energy is more violent, which is not something a Qi martial realm monk can withstand. After spending 2 hours, Suchen arrived at the foot of Daking Mountain, which is particularly famous in the Vajra Gate. Looking up at this majestic mountain, his heart was shocked. Where the white clouds were lingering, a huge broken wall with a height of 100 feet could be seen diagonally on the top of the mountain. Suchen saw this majestic scene with his own eyes, and then he felt that it was no wonder there were those rumors. No matter who sees such a large broken wall, abruptly inserted diagonally on the top of the mountain, as if flying from the sky, they can't help but feel reverie. After watching for a long time, Suchen looked towards the mountainside and saw a pillar standing every 100 feet on the slope from the mountainside to the foot of the mountain. This pillar was made of an unknown material. It was carved with complicated patterns. Although Suchen couldn't understand it, he knew that these were the unique patterns of the magic circle. There were probably no less than 1,000 such pillars surrounding the mountain from the foot of the mountain to the mountainside. Suchen was once again shocked by the grandeur and perseverance of the founder of the Vajra sect thousands of years ago. Underneath each pillar is a stone chamber surrounded by numbers. These stone chambers are all engraved with numbers, starting from the beginning, all the way to the number 900 that is faintly visible on the mountainside. These stone chambers can basically satisfy the daily practice of Vajra sect disciples. Getting closer, Suchen immediately felt that the spiritual energy here was unusual, with a violent aura. Even if he didn't deliberately move it, the spiritual energy in his body was a little restless. If an uninformed person were to practice here rashly, he would probably go crazy and die immediately. There is a special steward of the Vajra Gate on duty at the foot of the mountain, responsible for collecting and selling the fees for renting the stone chamber. In the cultivation stone room on the bottom floor, you have to pay 1 low-grade spiritual stone every hour, which is a bit ridiculously expensive. But it's worth considering that even at the lowest level, the concentration of spiritual energy inside is 3 times higher than outside. As soon as Suchen arrived at the door, a middle-aged steward said enthusiastically, "This junior brother must be here for the first time, right? This place was established by the ancestor of my Vajra sect, so junior brother should know something about it." Suchen nodded. After taking a brief look at the middle-aged steward, he seemed to be in his 40s, with a weather-beaten appearance. His cultivation level was only around the 5th level of Kaiwu. Moreover, one of his sleeves was empty and his arm was broken. The middle-aged steward continued, "Then I will introduce the situation here to my junior brother. There are a total of 999 stone chambers in Dakingshan, including 600 lower-grade chambers, 300 medium-grade chambers, and 99 upper-grade chambers. Room. The lower-level room is exclusively for Qi martial realm disciples, the middle-level room is exclusively for Xian martial realm disciples, and the upper-level room can only be used by the elders of Jinhui realm." Seeing that, Suchen listened carefully. The middle-aged manager said he was even more happy. "Junior brother seems to have reached the 6th level of Qi martial realm, right?" Suchen was non-committal, and the middle-aged steward smiled and said, "Junior brother is so young and has such a cultivation level. I am really ashamed of brother Nian. I don't know whether junior brother is. How many hours do you need to practice here?" Suchen thought for a moment and realized that the effect of the spiritual transformation pill was 3 hours, but it would take some time for him to adjust his condition to its optimal state, so it would take about 4 hours. He announced his name and handed over 4 spiritual stones. The middle-aged steward gave him a jade plaque with the number of the stone chamber 033 written on it. When using the stone chamber, insert the jade plaque into the corresponding stone slot in the stone chamber. That's it. The jade tablet has been set by the steward through secret methods. 4 hours later, the jade tablet will automatically open the stone door through the induction device in the stone trough. Junior brother Suchen, please wait a moment. There are still people in room 033, but there is only a quarter of an hour left. Please wait a moment and they will be in line soon. Suchen smiled and nodded, standing aside and watching the people coming and going, slightly lost in thought. Boom. The sound of a strong pounding on the counter woke Suchen out of his daze, and he turned around to look. It turned out to be a fat young man, about 20 years old, with a face full of flesh. He was staring at him with a pair of small eyes. The waiter at the counter yelled, "Yajiao, you son of a bitch. Hurry up and make room for me in a stone room, otherwise I will sell your ugly wife to a brothel." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1140. Chapter 1140. One of the top 10 masters in the Qi martial realm. The middle-aged steward named Yajiao bit his cheek tightly, dared to be angry but dared not speak, and whispered, "The lower stone chamber is full, and the nearest stone chamber is half an hour later. This is the Vajragate spiritual array. Here, anyone who comes must guard the Vajragate." With a pop sound, the obese young man slapped him. The middle-aged manager was slapped and fell to the ground, a trace of blood spilled from the corner of his mouth, and his eyes showed a mixture of hatred and shame. "Jinchengtai, don't bully others too much." The obese young man sneered, spat thick phlegm on Yajiao Sheng, and said contemptuously, "I'm just bullying you, how? Not only do I want to bully you, but after half a year, if you don't pay back the spiritual stones you owe me, I will also bully your wife." "Ha ha ha, I heard that your wife is a bit ugly, but she has a pretty good figure. She looks the same even when she turns off the lights and sleeps. Maybe your wife can give you another fat boy." Ha 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 ha. Jinchengtai's dirty words made Lu Sheng's eyes turn red. He howled and attacked Jinchengtai with his only hand. Jinchengtai showed disdain in his eyes and slapped Lu Sheng away with a casual wave of his hand. Just at that moment, stone room No. 033 was pushed open, and a woman came out. Jinchengtai's little eyes lit up, and he immediately squeezed into the vacant stone room. "Feel sorry. This room is mine." Suchen walked to the stone room and showed up his jade sign. "Leave far away. This stone room belongs to me," Jinchengtai roared, glanced contemptuously at this handsome young man, and waved his hand to close the stone chamber door. Clang, there was a sword cry, and the tip of the fine steel sword touched Jinchengtai's throat, less than half an inch away. Jinchengtai stared at Suchen and sneered, "Little bastard, you can't kill people with your sword like this, or, Grandpa will teach you." With that said, Jinchengtai was about to push away the tip of the sword with his hand. Chapter 22. Taking the spiritual transformation pill. Chi, the tip of the sword scratched his neck, leaving a trace of blood. Jinchengtai's small eyes widened with horror. He touched his throat and saw blood on his hand. The wound on it was quite deep. "I'm afraid it could be any deeper. If you put on a thread, you will cut your own throat. Damn you, I'll kill you." Jinchengtai's back was covered with cold sweat, mixed with shame and anger. His whole body's spiritual power quickly condensed in his palms, and he struck Suchen with a powerful move of vigorous mountain-splitting palm. Suchen sneered in his heart, "This Jinchengtai is also at the 6th level of Qi martial arts. With high-level cultivation, it is simply wishful thinking to defeat him with this strength. He dodged the powerful mountain opening palm in a flash, and with a bang sound, Manager Liu's counter was completely destroyed by this palm. Jin Chengtai he missed a hit and was about to turn around and attack again when his back suddenly felt cold. After a while, he felt a heartbreaking pain in his back. When he touched his back, there was blood on his back again. Jin Chengtai was furious, running towards Suchen and roaring repeatedly. However, no matter how much the fat man roared, he could not get a single lick of Suchen's clothes off him. Compared to Jin Chengtai's clumsy skills, Suchen was like a monkey. After 7 or 8 rounds, Jin Chengtai's fat body had already received more than a dozen wounds, and blood was flowing all over his body, like a bloody man. With a plop, Jin Chengtai fell to the ground, feeling dizzy due to excessive blood loss. However, for a Qi practitioner, this injury would not kill anyone. It was precisely because of this certainty that Suchen dared to teach this fat man a lesson. There was such a commotion all of a sudden, and there was already a lot of people around them. Many disciples who came here to practice suddenly surrounded the two of them. Haha, now we have something good to watch. That damn fat guy Jin Chengtai was scratched with blood, but he hadn't felt so relieved in a long time. SHH. Keep your voice down, and if someone with a heart hears it and reports it to his brother, you won't be able to bear the consequences. When the others heard this, they immediately shrank their heads, looked around for a while, and then said with some shame and annoyance, I just said a few words, no matter how domineering his brother is, why shouldn't others say it? However, the young man who took action was quite capable, but unfortunately he was afraid that he would be destroyed. Lu Sheng ran over and grabbed Suchen's arm, looking horrified and saying, stop fighting, don't fight again. If we continue to fight, people will be killed, and it will be bad if the elders are attracted. Suchen shook the blood droplets on the tip of the sword, not taking it seriously at all, and jokingly said, don't worry, you won't die. This fat pig is so fat, I am trying to help him lose weight. When Lu Sheng heard this, he knew that the young man had no intention of killing anyone. He breathed a sigh of relief and took 2 steps closer to persuade him in a low voice, little brother, yeah, there are not many people around now, so run away quickly. This Jin Chengtai has an older brother named Jin Shenyang. He is one of the top 10 masters in the Vajra sect Qi martial realm. He is protective of his shortcomings. We can't afford to offend him, so run away. One of the top 10 masters in the Qi martial realm, Suchen's heart moved. This was the first time he heard this name. Seeing that Suchen remained silent for a long time, Lu Sheng became even more anxious and tried to persuade him. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 1141. Chapter 1141, Taking the Spirit Transformation Pill. Rapidly increasing cultivation. Suchen knew that he was really worried about him, so he couldn't help but feel good about this middle-aged man. But he, Suchen, would not be scared away just because of his reputation as one of the top 10 masters in the Qi martial realm. He waved his hand and said, thank you for telling me this. But time is precious, and I still have to go to the stone room to practice. Can't waste any more time. After saying that, he really walked towards the stone room No. 033 and closed the stone door with a bang. Lu Sheng looked at the young man's disappearing figure, stood blankly for a while, then suddenly shook his head and sighed. He is someone who has been there, so he naturally knows that most young people are very energetic. It was because of this that he lost an arm and ended up in such a miserable state. This young man named Suchen looked very much like him back then. Touched by the unbearable memory, Yajia persuaded this young man to leave quickly to avoid disaster. However, just as he had his own way back then, this young man also chose to stay. I'll just guard him here. Maybe I can save him by then. Lu Sheng held his chest and coughed for a while, looking at Jin Chengtai lying unconscious on the ground. his eyes full of disgust and hatred. Suchen stood in the stone room and looked around. The 1-foot-long stone room was empty with only a futon, and a pillar standing in the middle. The array patterns on the pillar were arranged in a mysterious pattern, and waves of light rhythms emanated from it, absorbing the violent energy in the surrounding aura. The aura dissipated, leaving behind a rich spiritual energy suitable for cultivation in the stone room. Suchen took a deep breath of the spiritual energy and felt refreshed. Not daring to waste time at the moment, he inserted the jade token into the stone trough in the stone chamber, immediately sat down cross-legged, and slowly adjusted his condition to the best. Half an hour passed, Suchen was full of energy and slowly opened his eyes. It's time to take the elixir. Suchen opened the small box in his arms with some enthusiasm, and a round jade-white elixir lay quietly in it. This is one of the best elixirs in the Qi martial realm, a top-grade elixir, Hua. Miraculous elixir. Gently pinch this elixir and put it into your mouth. The elixir immediately turns into a cool nectar, flows into the body along the throat, and quickly gathers in the spine of the back along the veins of the limbs. There, even if the spiritual root of the monk is located, bursts of heat gradually spread from the spine. This heat gradually spread and affected the spiritual power running in the meridians. Suddenly, the speed of the spiritual power running in the meridians around the body suddenly increased several times. Ah, this feeling, this familiar feeling, is a middle-grade spiritual root. As the spiritual energy in the meridians circulates faster, the speed of converting and refining external spiritual energy also accelerates, allowing Suchen to find the familiar feeling when he had a middle-grade water spiritual root. Not only is it mid-grade, the efficacy of this spiritual elixir is still increasing. Suchen was pleasantly surprised. The heat in the spine of his back was still increasing, and he even felt a little hot. Gradually, the spiritual power in the meridians was running faster and faster. Even with the large amount of spiritual energy of the residual volume technique, Suchen could still feel a faint feeling of swelling in his meridians. Finally, the heat in his spine reached its peak, and even the sweat on his back steamed into bursts of white mist. Is this the feeling of a high-grade spiritual root? Sure enough, it's really strong enough. Suchen suppressed the excitement in his heart and ignored the swollen and throbbing meridians. Instead, he took advantage of the effect of the spiritual transformation pill to absorb the surrounding spiritual energy. The huge spiritual energy gathered into Suchen's body and passed through the meridians. The rapid operation and tempering turn it into pure spiritual power almost instantly and disperse into the body. It feels like the spiritual energy between heaven and earth penetrates directly into the body without any tempering or hindrance. This kind of it feels so cool. In just 1 hour, Suchen's cultivation level suddenly jumped from the 6th level of Qi martial arts to the 6th level of intermediate level, and it is still growing continuously. It's so cool. This can be understood clearly. It feels so good to see the spiritual power in the body increasing rapidly every minute. An hour and a half later, Suchen's cultivation reached the 6th level of Qi martial arts. At this time, the spiritual power in Suchen's body was already full. When you reach the extreme, if you want to grow, you can only open up a hidden meridian again to accommodate more spiritual energy. Whether you can break through to the 7th level depends on now. There is only half an hour left for the effect of the spiritual transformation pill. Suchen's eyes were firm, and his whole body and mind were immersed in cultivation. Outside the stone room, Jin Chengtai woke up and was supported by several younger brothers who came over to the stone room where Suchen was. "Break it open for me." Jin Chengtai lost too much blood, his face was pale, and he shouted coldly to a younger brother. The younger brother looked embarrassed and said with a bitter face, "Boss, you know that the stone chamber in this spiritual formation was specially reinforced. These 2 times are not enough to watch." "Waste," Jin Chengtai slapped him in the face, but because he lost too much blood and lost his strength, the slap on the little brother was so light that there was no harm at all. But the little brother screamed, fell to the ground and rolled around, screaming to the boss begged for mercy.